Birmingham police confirming that an eighth person is in custody in connection with the death of Mahogany Jackson. Police say that they have obtained arrest warrants of felony murder and kidnapping for Ariana Robinson. She is one of a slew of people facing charges. Earlier this week, police announced the arrest of 7 other people in connection to Jackson's death. Every one of those 7 individuals, men and women, 4 men, 3 women, they're charged with murder. All but one are charged with sodomy and kidnapping. Mahogany Jackson's body was found shot earlier this week in the Powderly neighborhood. And since Jackson's
the locals call a dead man's road, a desolate stretch of Cedar Avenue and 17th Street Southwest in Birmingham, Alabama. Overgrown weeds push through cracked pavement. Abandoned buildings stand as hollow sentinels. Discarded mattresses, broken furniture, and household waste create an unofficial dumping ground where unwanted things disappear. It was beneath one of these mattresses that police discovered 20-year-old Mahogany Jackson on February 25, 2024. Her body, discarded like the trash surrounding her, bore evidence of hours of torture before a bullet to the back of her head ended her suffering. But before darkness claimed her, Mahogany managed one final, desperate act. A text message to her mother, Gail Maddox, "Send help. Don't call," along with her location. Simple words carrying unimaginable terror. A daughter's last plea from the edge of oblivion. The most disturbing aspect wasn't just the brutality of her murder. It was who committed it. These weren't strangers who abducted Mahogany that February night. They weren't unknown predators lurking in shadows. They were people she knew, people she trusted, people she called friends. 8 individuals, ranging in age from 19 to 26, now face capital murder charges for what Birmingham police described as one of the most disturbing crime scenes they've encountered in their careers. The betrayal cuts deeper than any weapon could. Have you ever wondered how well you really know your friends? The people you laugh with, share secrets with, invite into your home? For Mahogany Jackson, that question became a death sentence when a dispute over money transformed friendship into something monstrous. Tonight, we examine how an ordinary evening evolved into a nightmare for a young mother whose only mistake was trusting the wrong people. We'll trace the investigation that brought 8 killers to justice and explore what Mahogany's tragic story teaches us about the masks people wear. Welcome to Dark Trace Crime Stories, where every case cuts deep, every detail matters, and the truth is never what it seems. If you're visiting for the first time, kindly subscribe and trace the darkness with us. To our loyal viewers, thank you for your unwavering support. Your presence makes every mystery even more gripping. Have you ever trusted someone who betrayed that trust? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and hit subscribe to join our community seeking justice for victims like Mahogany. Your support helps these stories be told. Mahogany Jackson never sought the spotlight. At 20 years old, her world revolved around her 3-year-old daughter, a bright-eyed little girl who represented everything Mahogany hoped to build. In the working-class neighborhoods of Birmingham, Alabama, Mahogany was just one of many young mothers balancing responsibilities beyond their years, determined to create something better. Those who knew her describe a woman defined by her devotion, not by grand ambitions or public achievements, but by the quiet dignity of showing up each day for her child. Her daughter's future was the compass that guided Mahogany's decisions, the motivation behind her sacrifices, the reason she pushed forward when paths grew difficult. She was a caring daughter and a loving mother, recalls a family friend. Everything she did was about making a better life for her little girl. The bond between Mahogany and her own mother, Gail Maddox, formed the foundation of their family. In Gail, Mahogany found both support and example, a demonstration of maternal strength she worked to emulate. Their relationship wasn't just mother and daughter. It was a partnership in raising the next generation. When challenges arose, it was to her mother that Mahogany turned, their connection a lifeline in uncertain times. This close-knit family unit created stability in a life that might otherwise have faltered under the weight of young parenthood. Together, they built routines and traditions, celebrated milestones, and weathered disappointments. They were ordinary in the most extraordinary way, people finding joy in simple moments, holding each other through difficult ones. What dreams did Mahogany harbor in quiet moments? What future did she envision while watching her daughter sleep? We know only fragments, aspirations for financial security, hopes for education, the universal parental desire to give a child more opportunities than you yourself received. These dreams, whatever their specific shape, died with her that February night. The tragedy of Mahogany's story lies partly in its incompleteness. A life interrupted before its narrative could fully develop. A mother taken before she could see her child grow. Potential unrealized. Questions that will never find answers. In the photographs shared by her family after her death, Mahogany's smile reveals a young woman still discovering herself. There's a softness in her eyes when she looks at her daughter, a protective instinct visible even through the camera lens. These images capture someone navigating the complex journey from girl to woman, from individual to mother, a transformation cut brutally short. Mahogany Jackson wasn't famous. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't extraordinary by society's typical measures. But in the ways that truly matter, in love, in responsibility, in human connection, she embodied values we all recognize. Her story resonates because, in her hopes and struggles, we see reflections of our own humanity. And perhaps that makes what happened to her all the more horrifying. February 24, 2024, began as countless other days had for Mahogany Jackson. Nothing in the morning light suggested this Saturday would be her last. No premonition warned that the people she trusted would become her executioners before the next sunrise. Birmingham in late February carries the last chill of winter. The city moves at its weekend pace, families running errands, friends meeting for lunch, churches preparing for Sunday services. Mahogany's day likely included the familiar rhythms of motherhood. Meals, playtime, perhaps a trip to the park if weather permitted. Ordinary moments that become precious in retrospect. What we know with certainty is that by evening, Mahogany's path intersected with 8 individuals who would later be charged with her murder. Their names, Brandon Pope, Francis Harris, Jeremiah McDowell, Blair Green, Sinaya McCall, Taja Lewis, Jayo Vaniclap, and Anna Robinson, would soon appear in headlines across Alabama. Their ages ranged from 19 to 26, young adults whose decisions that night would destroy one life and irreparably damage many others. These weren't strangers to Mahogany. They weren't predators who selected her at random. They were people from her social circle, individuals she had laughed with, shared conversations with, trusted enough to spend time around. People her mother might have recognized by name or face. People who, in the complex web of neighborhood connections, qualified as friends. What transformed this social gathering into a death sentence? Money, that most common of motives. Court documents and police statements indicate that a dispute over funds sparked the initial confrontation. The exact amount remains unspecified in public records, but the sum, whatever its size, became worth more than Mahogany's life to those involved. Arguments over money occurred daily without ending in violence. Words are exchanged, relationships cool, compromises form, or people simply walk away. But something different happened in this Birmingham gathering. The disagreement escalated beyond reason, beyond humanity. The atmosphere shifted from tension to danger, from disagreement to dominance. At some point during the evening, the dynamic changed irrevocably. Mahogany was no longer a friend among friends, but a captive among captors. The exact moment this line was crossed remains unclear. Was it a sudden eruption of violence or a gradual tightening of control? Did Mahogany immediately recognize her peril, or did realization dawn slowly as exit routes disappeared? What we do know is that by late evening, Mahogany Jackson was being held against her will by people she knew, people whose homes she had likely visited, people who may have held her daughter, people whose betrayal would be as complete as it was incomprehensible. The night stretched before her, hours of escalating terror still to come. As darkness settled over Birmingham, as her 3-year-old daughter perhaps wondered where mommy was, as her mother Gail went about her evening unaware of the horror unfolding across town, Mahogany found herself trapped in a nightmare from which there would be no awakening. The transformation of acquaintances into monsters rarely happens in an instant. Warning signs often appear, flashes of cruelty, moments of control, instances where boundaries are tested. Whether such signals existed in Mahogany's relationships with these 8 individuals, whether there were red flags she couldn't see or chose to overlook, we may never know. What followed in those dark hours would shock even veteran investigators and leave an entire community questioning how well they knew their neighbors, their friends, themselves. As Saturday evening deepened into night, what began as a dispute transformed into something far more dangerous. The exact location where Mahogany was initially detained remains unclear in public records, but investigators believe it was likely a residence belonging to one of the 8 suspects, a place where Mahogany had probably felt safe before. The transition from argument to abduction wasn't announced. No formal declaration marked the moment when Mahogany became a prisoner rather than a participant. But as minutes stretched into hours, the reality of her situation must have become increasingly apparent. Exit doors blocked, phone access restricted, threats escalating from verbal to physical. Court documents reveal that Mahogany endured hours of escalating abuse. What started as intimidation evolved into torture. The group, 8 against 1, subjected her to physical violence and sexual assault. Their actions weren't impulsive, but sustained, a prolonged exercise in cruelty that spanned the late hours of February 24th and continued into the early morning of February 25th. Most disturbing was their decision to document their crimes. Videos recovered by investigators show portions of Mahogany's ordeal, footage that would later provide damning evidence against her captors. The suspects recorded their actions, creating a digital record of their own depravity. A modern phenomenon where perpetrators become the archivists of their crimes. Somewhere in those terrifying hours, Mahogany found a moment, perhaps a bathroom break, perhaps a brief period when attention shifted elsewhere, to send a text message to her mother, Gail Maddox. The message was brief but clear. She was being held against her will. She provided her location and ended with the urgent plea, "Send help. Don't call." Those 5 words, "Send help. Don't call," reveal Mahogany's understanding of her precarious position. She knew that a ringing phone might alert her captors. She knew that her window for communication was dangerously narrow. She knew that discovery of her message could worsen her situation. Even in extreme danger, her thinking remained tactical, focused on survival. When Gail Maddox received her daughter's text, her world stopped. The message arrived without context, without explanation, but its urgency was unmistakable. Like any mother, Gail's response was immediate and decisive. She contacted authorities and mobilized family members. She shared information on social media, creating an impromptu search network. She did everything possible to find her daughter. Birmingham police responded to the report of a woman being held against her will, dispatching officers to the location Mahogany had provided. Family members converged from different directions. A community began to form around the search, people sharing Mahogany's photo, description, and last known whereabouts. But time was working against them. Investigators believe that Mahogany's captors discovered her attempt to seek help. Perhaps they noticed her using her phone. Perhaps they saw the message being sent. Perhaps they realized authorities might be approaching. Whatever triggered their awareness, their response was swift and final. In what police describe as the culmination of hours of torture, someone in the group shot Mahogany in the back of the head. A execution-style killing that ended her suffering but began a lifetime of grief for those who loved her. The search for a missing woman became a murder investigation. The hope of rescue transformed into the grim reality of recovery. Sometime after her death, Mahogany's body was transported to Dead Man's Road, that isolated dumping ground where her remains were hidden beneath a discarded mattress. What would you do if you received such a message from someone you love? A desperate text asking for help but warning against calling? How would you respond to those 5 words? Send help. Don't call. Knowing that someone you care about is in immediate danger? Would you know which authorities to contact? Would you know how to mobilize resources quickly? Would you know how to navigate the terrifying space between urgency and caution? Gail Maddox did everything right. She acted immediately. She contacted authorities. She organized search efforts. She spread information through every available channel. And still, it wasn't enough to save her daughter. The search for Mahogany Jackson ended on February 25, 2024, when Birmingham police officers discovered her body beneath a discarded mattress at an illegal dumping site. The location, Cedar Avenue and 17th Street Southwest, was known locally as Dead Man's Road, a grim nickname that proved tragically appropriate. The area, characterized by abandoned properties and illegally dumped waste, provided the killers with what they believed would be an effective hiding place. Officers securing the scene immediately recognized the gravity of what they'd found. This wasn't just a homicide. It was a crime scene that would haunt even experienced investigators. Mahogany's body showed evidence of extensive torture before the fatal gunshot wound to the back of her head. The medical examiner would later document in clinical detail what Mahogany had endured in her final hours. Information too graphic for public consumption, but essential for building the case against her killers. As word spread of Mahogany's death, the Birmingham community's response was immediate and powerful. What began as a search effort transformed into a movement for justice. Gail Maddox, who had been desperately coordinating search efforts just hours earlier, now became the voice demanding accountability for her daughter's murder. Social media platforms that had shared Mahogany's photo with missing captions now carried messages of outrage and calls for swift prosecution. The investigation moved with remarkable speed. Within days, all 8 suspects were identified and taken into custody. This rapid progress wasn't due to chance, but to a combination of solid police work and the suspects' own actions. In an era where digital evidence often proves crucial, Mahogany's killers had created an extensive electronic trail of their crimes. Most damning were the videos. In a decision that defies comprehension, several suspects had recorded portions of Mahogany's torture on their phones. These recordings, recovered through search warrants, provided investigators with irrefutable evidence of who was present and what role each person played. The footage, described by police as among the most disturbing they'd encountered, showed not just the crime, but the callous attitudes of those committing it. Beyond the videos, investigators gathered an array of additional evidence. Cell phone data placed suspects at key locations. Text messages between group members revealed coordination and intent. Physical evidence collected from the crime scene and the location where Mahogany was initially held provided forensic connections between the victim and her attackers. The digital trail extended beyond the night of the murder. Social media accounts showed connections between Mahogany and her killers, establishing their prior relationships. Electronic financial records helped clarify the money dispute that allegedly triggered the initial confrontation. Online communications revealed planning and, later, attempts to conceal evidence. Birmingham Police Department assigned their most experienced detectives to the case, working in conjunction with the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office to ensure that evidence was properly collected and documented. The investigation's thoroughness reflected both the heinousness of the crime and the community pressure for justice. Within a week of Mahogany's body being discovered, prosecutors had enough evidence to file initial charges against all 8 suspects. Brandon Pope, Francis Harris, and Jeremiah McDowell faced the most serious allegations: capital murder, kidnapping, and rape/sodomy. The remaining 5, Blair Green, Sinaya McCall, Taja Lewis, Jayo Vaniclap, and Ariana Robinson, were initially charged with felony murder. As the investigation continued, Detectives uncovered additional details about the crime that would later lead a grand jury to upgrade all charges to capital murder. The evidence painted a picture not of a spontaneous act of violence, but of sustained, deliberate cruelty. Hours of torture culminating in execution. The case was building, but for Mahogany's family, no amount of justice could fill the void left by her absence.
Birmingham police confirming that an eighth person is in custody in connection with the death of Mahogany Jackson. Police say that they have obtained arrest warrants of felony murder and kidnapping for Ariana Robinson. She is one of a slew of people facing charges. Earlier this week, police announced the arrest of 7 other people in connection to Jackson's death. Every one of those 7 individuals, men and women, 4 men, 3 women, they're charged with murder. All but one are charged with sodomy and kidnapping. Mahogany Jackson's body was found shot earlier this week in the Powderly neighborhood. And since Jackson's death, many questions of safety is swirling throughout the community. WVTM 13's Aaron Llewellyn is live and local for us tonight in Birmingham. Aaron, you learned today more on what people can do.
A timeline of escalating horror emerged. What began as a dispute over money, an everyday conflict that typically resolves without violence, had transformed into something beyond comprehension. The full account of Mahogany's final hours came to light gradually, each new detail more disturbing than the last. Court documents revealed that Mahogany's ordeal lasted approximately 6 to 8 hours. During this time, she was held against her will in a location controlled by one or more of the suspects. The initial confrontation about money quickly evolved into physical restraint, then intimidation, then outright torture. At no point was Mahogany given an opportunity to leave. At no point did any of the 8 people present intervene to stop what was happening. The suspects, Brandon Pope, 25, Francis Harris, 25, Jeremiah McDowell, 19, Blair Green, 26, Sinaya McCall, 24, Taja Lewis, 26, Jayo Vaniclap, 24, and Ariana Robinson, 23, represented a cross-section of young adults from the Birmingham area. Their ages ranging from 19 to 26, they were old enough to understand the consequences of their actions, yet young enough that their lives now stood permanently altered by the choices made that night. Prosecutors would later detail the specific roles played by each suspect. Some were primary aggressors, directly inflicting physical and sexual violence. Others assisted by preventing escape, recording the abuse, or helping transport Mahogany's body after her death. Under Alabama law, all 8 faced capital murder charges regardless of who pulled the trigger, as all were considered participants in the events leading to her death. The evidence against them proved overwhelming. Most incriminating were the videos recorded on the suspects' own devices, footage showing portions of the torture session and moments leading up to Mahogany's death. These recordings captured not just actions, but attitudes, the casual cruelty, the absence of empathy, the treatment of another human being as an object rather than a person. In my years of law enforcement, this ranks among the most disturbing cases I've encountered, stated one Birmingham police official during a press conference. The evidence shows not just a murder, but a complete disregard for human dignity. Forensic evidence further strengthened the case. DNA samples collected from the crime scene and from Mahogany's body linked multiple suspects to the assault. Ballistics matched the fatal bullet to a weapon recovered during the investigation. Cell phone tower data tracked the movements of several suspects from the location of the torture to the dumping ground where Mahogany's body was discovered. Text messages exchanged between suspects before, during, and after the crime revealed coordination and awareness. Some messages discussed what to do with Mahogany as the situation escalated. Others, sent after her death, showed attempts to establish alibis and coordinate stories. These digital communications provided prosecutors with a clear picture of premeditation and consciousness of guilt. Perhaps most chilling was the evidence suggesting that Mahogany's murder was triggered by her attempt to seek help. The timing between her text to her mother and the fatal gunshot indicated that her captors discovered her communication and responded with lethal violence. Her final act of courage, reaching out for rescue, became the catalyst for her execution. As these details became public through court proceedings and media reports, the Birmingham community reacted with shock, grief, and outrage. Vigils for Mahogany drew hundreds of participants. Community forums addressed the broader implications of such violence. Local organizations focused on domestic abuse and conflict resolution saw increased interest in their programs. "This isn't who we are as a community," stated one local pastor during a prayer service for Mahogany. "But we must acknowledge that it happened here among
Pay
us
for this pussy
and
nigga.
ask ourselves
Get your
what
bands
changes we
up. Are
need
you
to
ain't
make."
tricking, nigga? I'ma hit
The
your
case
mans
resonated
up. Please
particularly
don't call me
strongly
twin.
with young
I don't
mothers
look like you,
who
bad
saw
bitch,
in
and I'm cocky.
Mahogany
Make a
a
hating hoe
reflection
uncomfortable.
of their own vulnerability. The fact that she left behind a 3-year-old daughter added another layer of tragedy to an already devastating story. Community fundraisers began collecting money for the child's future needs, a small measure of support for a life permanently altered by violence. For many in Birmingham, the most disturbing aspect of the case was the relationship between victim and perpetrators. These weren't strangers who attacked a random target, but people from Mahogany's social circle. Individuals she knew well enough to spend time with voluntarily. The betrayal of that basic trust shattered assumptions about safety and friendship that many had taken for granted. "If you can't trust your friends, who can you trust?" asked one community member at a forum discussing the case. The question hung in the air, unanswerable yet essential. As the legal process advanced, as evidence accumulated and charges were formalized, the full picture of what happened to Mahogany Jackson came into focus. It was a portrait of cruelty that few could comprehend and none could justify. A crime that would test the limits of the justice system and leave permanent scars on a community. The arrests came swiftly. Within days of discovering Mahogany's body, Birmingham police had taken all 8 suspects into custody. Their initial court appearances painted a stark picture. 8 young adults in orange jumpsuits, facing a judge and the weight of a justice system prepared to hold them accountable for an unconscionable act. The charging process evolved in stages. Initially, 3 suspects, Brandon Pope, Francis Harris, and Jeremiah McDowell, faced the most serious allegations: capital murder, kidnapping, and rape/sodomy. The remaining 5, Blair Green, Sinaya McCall, Taja Lewis, Gio Vaniclap, and Ariana Robinson, were charged with felony murder. Some defendants also faced additional charges of second-degree assault and robbery, reflecting the complex nature of the crime. As the investigation continued and evidence mounted, prosecutors presented their findings to a grand jury. After reviewing the case, the grand jury made a significant decision. All 8 suspects would face upgraded charges of capital murder. This decision reflected both the severity of the crime and the evidence suggesting that each defendant played a meaningful role in the events leading to Mahogany's death. Alabama law allows capital murder charges for accomplices even if they didn't personally commit the killing. Under the state's complicity statute, individuals who aid, abet, or otherwise participate in events leading to a murder can face the same penalties as the person who delivered the fatal blow. This legal framework proved crucial in a case involving multiple perpetrators, with varying levels of direct involvement. The bail hearings represented another critical juncture in the legal process. Prosecutors successfully argued that all 8 defendants should be held without bond under Aniah's law, legislation named after Aniah Blanchard, a 19-year-old who was kidnapped and murdered in 2019. The law, passed in 2022, gives judges greater authority to deny bail to defendants charged with violent crimes. The judge agreed, ordering all 8 suspects to remain in custody pending trial. In March 2024, the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office announced its intention to seek the death penalty for all 8 defendants. This decision, to pursue capital punishment for everyone involved rather than just the primary perpetrators, underscored the prosecution's view of the case as an extraordinary example of group criminality deserving maximum punishment. "The brutality of this crime demands the most serious response our justice system allows," stated the district attorney during a press conference announcing the decision. Each defendant had multiple opportunities to stop what was happening, to help Mahogany Jackson, to contact authorities. Instead, they participated in torture that ended with execution. all 8 defendants have entered not guilty pleas. Their defense attorneys have begun the process of filing motions, requesting evidence, and preparing for what will likely be a lengthy legal battle. Some defense teams have indicated they may seek separate trials, arguing that their clients had lesser roles in the crime and should not be judged alongside the primary perpetrators. As of May 2024, the case remains in the pretrial phase. Court dates for evidentiary hearings have been scheduled, but the full trial is likely months away. The defendants remain in custody at Jefferson County Jail, denied bond under Anaya's law. For Mahogany's family, particularly her mother Gail Maddox and her young daughter, the wait for justice continues, a painful limbo where grief meets determination to see accountability for an unthinkable crime. Mahogany Jackson's story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the society we inhabit. Her tragedy wasn't the result of random violence or an unknown predator, but emerged from her own social circle, people she knew, trusted, and chose to spend time with. This reality challenges our basic assumptions about friendship and safety in ways that demand reflection. The most disturbing lesson from Mahogany's case is that danger often wears a familiar face. FBI statistics consistently show that most violent crimes are committed by someone known to the victim. In homicide cases, approximately 80% of female victims knew their killer. Mahogany's story isn't an anomaly, but a devastating example of a broader pattern, one we often prefer not to acknowledge. What makes someone transition from friend to threat? The transformation rarely happens without warning. Behavioral experts point to several indicators that a relationship may harbor hidden dangers. Controlling behaviors often precede violence. People who monitor your whereabouts, check your phone, or express anger when you spend time with others are displaying concerning patterns. These behaviors may initially be disguised as care or interest, but represent attempts to establish dominance. Disproportionate reactions to minor issues can signal volatility. Someone who responds to small disagreements with extreme anger, who cannot de-escalate conflicts, or who holds grudges over trivial matters may lack the emotional regulation necessary for safe relationships. Isolation tactics, attempts to separate you from family and friends, create vulnerability. Healthy relationships add to your support network rather than diminishing it. Anyone who consistently criticizes your loved ones or makes spending time with them difficult is potentially dangerous. Financial exploitation often accompanies other forms of control. Arguments about money, pressure to lend funds, or unexplained borrowing can indicate problematic dynamics. While the exact nature of the money dispute in Mahogany's case remains unclear, financial conflicts frequently precede violence. The presence of these warning signs doesn't guarantee danger, but their accumulation should prompt caution. Recognizing potential threats early provides opportunities for safe disengagement before situations escalate beyond control. Beyond individual vigilance, Mahogany's case highlights the critical importance of community support networks. Her mother's immediate response to her text message, contacting authorities, mobilizing family, spreading information through social media, demonstrates how quickly a community can activate when properly alerted. These networks function most effectively when established before emergencies arise. Practical steps for building personal safety networks include maintaining regular contact with multiple trusted individuals who know your routine and would notice your absence. Establishing code words or signals with family members that can communicate danger without alerting potential threats. Connecting with local community organizations that provide resources for conflict resolution and emergency assistance. Familiarizing yourself with local law enforcement procedures for welfare checks and missing person reports. Digital safety protocols might have given Mahogany additional protection. While her text to her mother showed remarkable presence of mind under extreme duress, established emergency procedures could have provided more options. Location sharing apps with trusted contacts.
Pay for this pussy nigga, yeah. Get your bands up. Or you ain't tripping nigga, I'ma hit your mans up.
Emergency SOS features on smartphones allow quick, discreet alerts to predetermined contacts and authorities. Prearranged check-in systems ensure that missed communications trigger immediate response. Documentation of concerning behaviors creates evidence trails that can support intervention before violence occurs. Perhaps the most important lesson from Mahogany's story is that prevention requires collective responsibility. The 8 individuals charged with her murder didn't become capable of extreme violence overnight. Their capacity for cruelty likely manifested in smaller ways that went unchallenged by those around them. Communities that normalize aggression, that dismiss minor boundary violations, or that fail to intervene in escalating conflicts create environments where tragedies become possible. What changes will you make to protect yourself and loved ones after hearing Mahogany's story? Will you establish emergency protocols with family members? Will you reevaluate relationships that display warning signs? Will you commit to speaking up when you witness concerning behaviors in your community? Mahogany Jackson's life ended at 20 years old, leaving a 3-year-old daughter without a mother and a family forever altered by grief. Her story demands more than sympathy. It requires action. The best memorial we can offer is a commitment to creating communities where such betrayals become increasingly rare, where warning signs prompt intervention, and where safety networks activate before tragedy strikes. In the aftermath of Mahogany Jackson's murder, a 3-year-old girl faces life without her mother. This child, whose name has been kept private to protect her privacy, represents both the deepest tragedy of this case and its most urgent call to action. She will grow up knowing her mother only through photographs, stories, and the love that continues to surround her through extended family. Gail Maddox, now raising her granddaughter, carries dual burdens, processing her own grief while creating stability for a child too young to understand why mommy never came home. The Birmingham community's response has been powerful and sustained. Vigils held in Mahogany's memory have drawn hundreds of participants. Fundraisers established for her daughter's future needs have received donations from across Alabama and beyond. Local organizations focused on violence prevention have seen increased volunteer participation, with many citing Mahogany's story as their motivation for involvement. "We cannot bring Mahogany back," said one community organizer at a memorial event, "but we can honor her by protecting others. We can ensure her daughter grows up in a safer community than the one that took her mother." Beyond the immediate circle of grief, Mahogany's case has prompted broader conversations throughout Birmingham about trust, safety, and community responsibility. Schools have implemented additional programming on healthy relationships and conflict resolution. Neighborhood watch groups report increased participation. Local media continues to follow both the legal proceedings against her killers and the community initiatives sparked by her death. Mahogany Jackson was not a public figure in life, but in death, her story has become a catalyst for change. Her name now represents both a tragedy to mourn and a call to action, a reminder that communities are only as safe as the connections they foster and the values they uphold. For those watching this account of Mahogany's life and death, the most meaningful response isn't sympathy alone, but commitment to action. Check on your loved ones. Establish emergency protocols. Speak up when you witness concerning behaviors. Support organizations working to prevent violence. If this story has affected you or reminded you of experiences in your own life, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Please like this video and subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories for more content that goes beyond sensationalism to explore the human realities behind tragic headlines. Remember Mahogany Jackson not just as a victim, but as a young mother whose story demands we do better for her daughter, for our communities, and for all the Mahoganys still among us, deserving protection from betrayal's deadly reach.